My other question is always when we talk about music in the secular world and going out or whatever, but we've created this culture of exclusiveness where it's either in here or it's nowhere. How are we to go out in the world and do that work if we can't go out into the world and do the work? Like how is that contradicts Christ's whole thing, his whole command of go out in the world. If somebody sings a song for 3.5 minutes and it offends you to the point where you have to run away from it, as opposed of, like, I just find that very immature. And if I'm wrong, but just from experience, why should why should that affect you if we've been sold out for this Christ and he's awesome and he's the head of everything and he's this and he's that? Then none of that stuff really should matter if we're supposed to be living and eating amongst the people, like the rules that you said about evangelism. Like how that, I don't see that possible if we have created this culture of I can't go outside, which is why church is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, blah, blah. It's like, how are we evangelizing if we're always here looking at the same 10
Always
people?
in the
Like
same
I don't.
building
So just for me personally, just laying that bed of us having this culture of judgment, and then instead of us working on our own comfortabilities and our own stuff, we put it on the thing. So we say, you can't go to the club because my experience is negative. Whereas somebody like me, I never had a bad experience, as for not to use the club as a thing, but it's just a building. So I didn't go for the demonic reasons. I went to have a good time. Hang out with some people, dance, laugh with some people, whatever.
But I think the other part is remembering that everybody's stuff, right, is not the same. Right, because there are some of us who better not probably go in there.
Right.
Because somehow the cup is full and then it's empty 3 times.
Right.
And 4 times. So I think knowing, and then you at somebody else's house and you say, how I get here? And you forget, right? But that's some of us, everybody's temptation, that's the word, is totally different. Wherein you know
true.
that you can go there.
But I don't even think he's at temptations or has even gotten into a personal level. I think this is still a very broad stroke that he's
just
painting.
a cultural thing.
Yeah, and there are some things, and I listen attentively, and there are some things that are like on point. And I guess when you start talking culturally, I think before you do what you say, or we take a position that we often say the church takes as being judgmental, I think you have to look at things from a broader perspective on that side.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Okay, because there are a couple of things. Often we make a statement that we're not supposed to judge, and I can show you scriptures where Jesus actually tells us to judge. I can show you that in the kingdom that it is our position to judge. And then I would challenge you the same way with what does the word judge mean? Because when you're thinking about it, it only means to make weighty. You know what I'm saying? So it's a balanced weight. When you're judging, you're looking for the balanced weight. So judging is not always a negative thing, but we make it a negative thing. Just think about the word. Whenever we say the word judge in church, it's always with a negative connotation, but it's not. Because we judge to make a wise decision the same way we judge a person. Yeah, so, and again, we don't have to get caught there. We just need to watch, the perception of doing the same thing from a different angle. So, when we start talking culture, I think we have to have empathy when we start looking at culture, especially Black church. When we start looking at the African-American church and the African-American experience, we have to bring empathy into that, because a lot of what you said was true. There was a lot of miseducation. There was a lot of misinformation. There were probably a lot of traditions passed down. But then ask yourself why. Right. Because at the end of the day, that's where our answer lies, is in why. Why were they taught this way? Why? So, okay, let's remember that originally coming out of slavery, they didn't have access to the entire Bible. The The Bible was a manipulative tool. Religion was a manipulated tool to keep them in certain places, to keep them loyal to taskmasters or slave masters. So we had that issue. Then we had African Americans that began to break. And remember, and when they even begin to be allowed to have their own services or to preach, there was censorship in that. In other words, there was a white person there that would tell them they could preach this, but they couldn't preach that. So, there has been, this is just not on us. It's a lot of it that's been handed down. Like, I was fortunate. I grew up with my great-grandmother, who was 96 years old when she passed. My great-grandmother, her parents were slaves. So she experienced this thing pretty much firsthand. She actually saw her parents sold, and she ended up being raised by one of her aunts. So, we got firsthand a lot of those stories and a lot of those experiences of what was. And I guess that's what makes me empathetic, because I go back to my great-grandmother and I look at why she thought the way she thought, why she taught us the way she taught us. It wasn't so much of trying to restrict as it was trying to protect. Right. So a lot of the things that we listen to and we take as judgments that comes from older generational saints, it was because that's what they were taught to protect. It was like, there wasn't, it was almost that trust factor of we don't trust you enough to make a decision on moderation. So what we're going to tell you is, instead of moderation to the extreme, don't touch that. You get what I'm saying? So it was the same way with a lot of, especially music. It was a lot of it wasn't just that the music was so bad. Of course, there were messages in the music, and we talked about this, when we were outside, and some accountabilities, and I hope we get a chance to get that far. But a lot of it.
They had a meeting before here?
It just happened. It did. It wasn't planned. It just happened. We had a conversation.
I feel like Gail.
But so a lot of what we hear and what we look at the older saints, and we start to judge them basically about their positioning concerning certain things in the church, we forget what was passed down to them. Right. We forget how they learned. We forget that they were forbid to learn how to read on their own. We forget that one time the Bible was used as a tool against them to control them. We forget those things, and we just hear them say what they say and immediately say, oh, that's so wrong, that's so immature, that's so judgmental, no, that's the culture that they had to learn to survive in and thrive in and find protection in. So music has always been an important part of the African American church, the Black church experience, and will continue to be. We are that people that if your music jacked up, I don't care how well you preaching. If your music jacked up, jokers won't even get to the preaching because they'll bounce. They'll bounce because they cannot sing. We got to go. So it is that important. But I just want us to, look at this from a broader perspective as we walk this thing out, that we don't do the same thing, judging without empathy to understand their positions and why they thought the way and why they said the way. And here's the last thing, and I'll turn it over. You can take it whichever way you want. Look, when we know better, there should be an expectancy for us to do better. So as we've gotten a greater understanding of who God is and how broad the love of God is and how powerful the love of God is, that allows us to be sympathetic, empathetic to people that even don't look like, live like, think like, function like us. When we can go back now and look at the example that Christ, left without a religious, judgmental lens, but see the work, see the kindness, see the friendship, really look at scriptures and see them come to life as who he hung out with, who he was concerned about. I think that empowers us to do better than generations that came before us, but But, I guess I'm stuck there. I want us to be empathetic when we look at where we come from, to understand where we are, and then to figure out how we do better. So,
And then I think, sorry, just kind of also another piece. And again, I didn't have a grandmother that was that old, but I do have movies that I've seen that have shown like the kids who went to church boldly with their long dresses on and sneaking out to go to juke joints and all of these things really to kind of like when we're talking about, because the goal was to talk about the secular versus those who play in both spaces, right? That there was a culture created before any of us were thought about that made that life unacceptable and not good enough, or I think there was a movie recently that was created that was the same space. It was a pastor and his son. His son wanted to rap. He couldn't rap, but he could be the minister of music at the church.
right.
It
right.
was
I
there's
saw
a
it.
it's
Saw
a
that
space
little
that was
movie,
created in culture, and some people it's super relatable, and I think that's the piece that there's somebody probably watching and battling with the space of this is where my heart is too in both places, and can your heart exist in both places?
So we're going to flip this back to you, but this is really funny because at one point in time, this was an argument between religious denominations. Like, it was the same thing. Like, what you heard in Pentecostal holiness churches versus hymns in the Baptist church. And it was like, don't you go down there messing around with them holy rollers or them Pentecostal folks playing that music, dancing all around the church and whatnot. So even inside the church, as far as, the music has been an issue. They were about ready to stone my man that wrote Oh Happy Days. Right. Like, what is wrong with him? When that song came out, it was like, it caused so much conflict in the church. A song but it wasn't even about the lyrics of the song, it was the beat. And man, so this has been an ongoing thing, and it's not just, dare say, what we would prescribe or describe as secular. It's been the music, period, in the church that has caused, this disturbance and these in-depth conversations. So to bring it back so we can move forward, Karen is watching Willie Moore Jr. She hears this incident because this is where we start.
That's where we started.
This is
but
supposed
you
to be the crux
made
of the
a
matter,
bed
but you
and
was
made
making the
it,
bed.
and then you put people in it. It was real deep.
So,
but it was, again, go ahead, Dan.
So she's listening to Willie Moore Jr. There's a faithful keyboardist to his church, his pastor, that has been faithfully serving. He's on time, on point, prepared, no issues with him. Until it is made known that he also plays in what we're going to describe as secular music.
Boom, boom, boom.
Just so that everybody can get on the same page, that he also plays in a secular band. The pastor now pulls the young man and says, you have to make a decision between playing for the church, which he loves to do, or playing in the band. Mind you, that the church can't afford to pay him full time to feed his family, and the other work that he does, in these other places is part of his income for taking care of his family. So we got to this point, and let's start digging and dealing with this particular point of, can you be faithful in both?
You already are. Because in that scenario, I've actually been through that myself. All of that it's more preference than anything else. On a financial level, though, if I'm employed by your church and you're not able to pay me a living wage, that I don't believe you have any authority to tell me how I live my life, not necessarily in a sinful way, but how I make money outside of this occupation. Because I am doing this for the church, so we should have that conversation. Outside of, we're doing it for God, but I'm here at your church, right? But it's preference because if he were, like I told you outside, if he were a manager at Macy's, this isn't a conversation. Pastor isn't pulling him aside. If he's a life insurance, right? Nobody's pulling you aside and saying, hey, you need to choose. And so that draws with our own hearts, like, why is it? And I think because the stigma of the lifestyle gets put on it, as opposed to like somebody like me, when I go out and do quote unquote gigs, I'm going to work. Like it's not this extravagant thing. They make it seem that way because it's PR. They have to, so that you're excited to come to the concert.
Yeah.
You're excited to meet who's ever the head of the band or whoever it is. But in reality, it's a whole lot of work. It's rehearsing, it's learning songs, it's making sure your instruments are good, it's traveling, it's dealing with light guys and sound guys, and then you're on stage for however long you're on stage, and then you're off, and then it's a relaxation period, just like when you finish preaching. Like it's okay, then it's back
on to it.
Get your stuff. If you're not big time, it's you get in your own car, you putting the stuff in your own thing. It's work. So for this guy to be faithful to the church, to come and do that, I don't think it's a question about God at all, because I think, first of all, if he's faithful to the church and he's getting whatever he's getting from God, from that church, and he's there, he's on time, and he's not hindering the Spirit of God, I don't think it's a conversation. And I think it's a preference that the pastor needs to deal with himself to say, okay, if he were working at TGI Fridays, then we go in there after service, right? And nobody's questioning anything. If he's, he's at Nordstrom Rack and he's the manager, he's selling clothes. That has nothing to do with God and everything to do with, I used to work at Macy's, right? So I know we used to get people to get them credit cards, and you gonna get these clothes, and I know you don't have any money, and that's absolutely nothing to do with God.
Right.
But nobody has a problem with it. And I think that's a greater question, because musicians on both sides, I've been in some gospel tours as well, and it's the same lifestyle for those that are into the lifestyle. But I think even in normal church, people are dealing with drugs and womenizing or menizing and sexuality and all of those things. But for whatever the reason, we've scapegoated it onto the musician lifestyle, because the musician is, when David goes out, he's got to be 30 women sitting there and he's snorting cocaine. So I understand. So I don't think it's a God and devil thing, because for a musician like myself, when I go out and play, I'm not thinking about the devil. I'm thinking about the art of music. And I have been brought up, my dad has every R&B vinyl there is to know. So I've been brought up in that world of understanding the art of music. So once you start learning how to play an instrument, which I implore everybody to try to either learn how to play an instrument or learn how to write a song, because you'll figure out that there's so much work in just doing that you're not necessarily thinking about, am I offending God? No, I'm honoring the art of what he's allowed me to invest in. And it's a job.
And I think, for real, I think that's where this thing goes sideways. Is this separation of being a human being, a person with a job, versus being, quote unquote, a leader in church. Because here's what we do, especially in the African American church. If you stand on stage, you automatically a leader. I don't care what you do. If you do the announcements, if you somehow get caught sweeping the stage down, and you, he's a leader. Watch him. So, and watch this. Let me make this real simple, because again, I think we could get this thing so caught up on a particular being music versus this is universal.
Right.
There was a gentleman a few years ago when we were out at Creighton, when we were still located on Creighton, and the guy got up and we allowed him to read scripture. He just got up, he read the morning scripture, he sat down. Later that evening, I started getting phone calls and text messages, and I'm like, what is this all about? How dare you? Well, how dare you who? First, I'm wondering, who are you? Because I done figured out You don't go to our church. You don't know anything about our church. You happened in this one day. So how dare you this, that, and the other. So, yeah, you maintain. So, look, okay. Will you be kind enough to call me and we can discuss your issue? The person actually calls me, and here was the thing. How dare you allow such and such to get up on stage and read the holy word? Because he was in the club last night having a drink, and I know it was him because he was sitting right beside me while I was having my drink.
Is you talking about me, Dad?
No.
Oh, not
I
this
said
time.
a gentleman that was.
Not
So
this time.
I'm like, wait a minute. He was in the same place
That you
doing the exact same thing that you were doing. You love the Lord. Your statement is to me is that you saved and you're going to heaven. But something wrong with him, or we have a big issue with him because he stood up and read the scripture and stepped, in the pulpit. And now, pulpit in black church, we can, Jesus Christ, I done almost been killed big over the, that's a whole nother topic over the pulpit, boy. My grandma and them, boy, Jesus, you step up there if you want to. But that's another
and I guess
story.
like you were saying, universal. We're talking about music because we have you here, but I think across the board, and also to bring some inclusion, like certain platforms, regardless of what they may be, once you stand here, there's an expectation for you never to fail.
I think, and help me, Dave, I think musicians get it so bad simply because of the identification with Lucifer's fall from grace in heaven.
I don't even think it's that deep. I get what you're saying, and that's totally true, yes, and we talked about that. But I think it's more so on a general level. I think people see musician and they see rock and roll, what's been blasted on MTV, the drunkenness, the women, the image of it. I think it stems absolutely.
It definitely flows from the fall of Lucifer, because you remember what.
But Lucifer was playing gospel music.
But remember what his role was in heaven. He was the musician, the sounds. Mm-hmm. So now his fall from grace is literally a fall of grace for the sound. So now all of a sudden, because he's fallen, there is a delineation between good sounds and the Lucifers.
I got you.
And
but
the Lucifers and you.
Who knows what those sounds are?
Great question.
I won't damn.
That's a great question. But I think, my point is that that's where the generalization comes from, that if you play this and if you do that, we identify that, or that's identified with the bad sound, the tempting sound.
Or the culture. To this culture thing.
Okay, we got a question in the audience.
We ain't ready for that yet.
That's not the section it was in I was talking. But go ahead on.
You got to get a mic, because...
So it's always been said that music creates a feeling.
Right.
So you have to be careful what you let enter into your ear gates, and you have to be careful because this particular type of music causes this feeling. So that has been perpetuated for years and years and years, and I've heard it for years and years and years.
Okay, but let's ask Dave, as a musician, is it true? Does music elicit certain response? There are certain songs or sounds elicit certain emotional responses in us.
There's no blanket statement to that, because music is a very subjective thing personally. So you can listen to a song and it gives you some type of response, and I can listen to the same thing and be like, that's the worst thing I ever heard. So I don't think there's one immediate thing. Now, are some songs created to do specific things?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes, Knuck If You Buck really gets me there. If y'all know what that is.
Huh?
It makes me excited. It makes me want to fight. That's what the song is.
But that's what it's created.
That's what it was created.
So never mind.
You see me, I just kept talking. Some stuff you just not gonna catch. But I'm saying it because when you play it in a space, it immediately shifts the room.
Right.
You know what I mean?
There
So,
is
yeah.
a response. But again, if you play that in a room of different
People
demographic of people,
like this,
they'll
if
look
you
at
play
you
it
like,
again, he gonna say,
what
why
is
Don't
is
it?
turn
that?
that
So
mess off.
I don't think, so to answer your question, like I don't think there, of course, music definitely, I think music is awesome because it, can I finish?
Yeah, go ahead.
Man, you got Sunday.
They gonna have one mic.
Well,
So of course, music, it definitely, I think it's an amazing just thing because it pulls at your feelings. And it does so wonderfully because, I mean, you can listen to songs and it takes you back to, oh, I remember, yada, 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 yada. It's awesome, but it's no blanket thing. So like when we were talking about just responsibility, it's hard to think of the responsibility of the art because the art is going to do something different for you and you even listening to the same song at the same
song,
time.
right.
So now, yes, there's extremes, like the song we were talking about, of course.
Yeah.
There's extremes, but just blanketly, like for example, the opera. If this musician that we're talking about, if he were playing in the opera, all of a sudden, you see the feeling y'all
different.
just got?
Yeah.
Like, oh,
It's
okay.
different.
Where the opera is, if you ever read the words, just because they're reading it, they're singing in Latin, it's not great at all. It's sex, drugs, rock and roll. But the feeling that we have given and told
Given that
people,
music, right.
or if I played in a symphony outside of church, oh, that's great. You know, you're some kind of classical genius. I'm a classical pianist. The mood, see how the mood changes with us right now. But if I say I go and play with Drake when I leave church,
I'll
then
be like,
all
"Can
of
I
a
get a
sudden it's,
ticket?"
ooh, because his, right, but then I'm just on stage playing. Or not being knowledgeable of the artist, knowing that the artist and his songs are not his or their own. They're just
They're
the
written-
mouthpiece
a
of
lot of them are
hundreds
composed
of
by somebody
people.
else, right.
And I think that's where it gets cloudy because we look at the person because they're on the platform, just like we look at,
Platform, yeah.
preachers,
Same
not
thing with
knowing
pastors.
that it's a whole business of people. And Drake may not even have written anything,
Any of the words,
but he
right.
signed that contract.
Right.
Just like if I signed a contract to work at McDonald's, and no matter how much gluttony comes in the building, I have to do my job. And we pass that over as because you're on the pedestal, so you get the stones, not knowing that
you're the face.
Carmen wrote the song and she living her life and in church and don't nobody know it
Right.
because she's
On the
not
back
on
row.
the pedestal.
Yeah, you know, that's a great point because there are a lot of pastors that don't write their sermons. They have teams. They have teams that actually research the concepts they come up with and literally write
That was
the
on Polly.
content.
I don't know if you watched Polly, but it was on that movie. I would never forget.
It-
That
and
was a
write the
person who
content.
like
Yeah.
said there are 25 glad texts. You have to put them in your sermon, and I need to see it on Sunday.
Yeah,
He had to
so-
figure out a way to make it happen.
So content, is not always, the work of the individual that's delivering it. Let's take this back outside to your
Where I
car
wasn't,
and let's talk about the accountability and the responsibility of the artist. Especially he or she that stands and make the confession or the statement that I'm saved, I love the Lord. And we're not questioning their relationship at all. Where does that accountability, responsibility lie in the content that you will stand up and be the face of?
There is a line that personally, there's many lines that I won't cross that I've been presented to in other people writing stuff and sending it to me and me writing stuff. Like but that's a personal thing. I think what we have done a bad job in is if somebody says, because we watch the Grammys and everybody gets up and says, oh, thank God, and the song is horrible, right? But for some reason, we look at this as it's just bad as opposed of that's maybe just where they are. Like I remember 10 years ago when I was writing music, it was way different than what I'm writing now. Right. Because just my walk was a bit immature there. So, and some of the art that I was getting inspiration from was not holy art. Like I remember somebody telling me you can't because I'm a huge Jimi Hendrix fan. So they're like, you can't listen to Jimi Hendrix, but I was like, that's what I was drawn to. So I'm learning how to play like that. Or you can't play like that because that's not holy. So who do I learn guitar from? So these things, they matter, right? But we do a very, very good job at looking at the individual and saying, right now, because of this 3.5-minute song, which just mind boggles me, that if you don't like it, just don't listen to it. It's not that deep. But we just say, oh, they're the worst. And they can get up there and talk about God, and they can be in church and yada, 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 instead of saying that may just be where their walk is. So, you know, even like you look at like a Mali Music who went the other way, and he was doing the church thing and said, you know what, I'm going the R&B route because he wanted to affect more people, because he was like, I'm tired of just doing the gospel conferences because everybody here already knows what we talking about. So we're not evangelizing. We're just talking to the same people over and over again. So then he did his thing, and he got so many stones, and people stopped going to his shows. Same ministry, if not even more powerful, because now he can be a bit more open with his testimony, and I can talk to you in a different way. So we never seem to pinpoint and say like these artists and these rock and roll or whatever, they're just horrible. Like, no, maybe they do love God.
Right.
But you don't know them personally.
No, but you
but
spend
we
time to figure that
blanket
out
this because I heard a song and your song was not glorifying.
I got it.
See how they censor me? Don't.
Technically, that's your department.
Oh, shots fired. Y'all didn't hear that because it won't on the microphone. Don't worry, Pastor Joe. Next month you singing, so don't even try it.
That
No,
was good.
sir. Service is over.
But
Wow, that was good.
I forgot the statement I was trying to make. But yeah, that was. I just think we never look at people. We don't give grace. Ever.
Yeah, that's good.
And we definitely don't give grace, especially with people that are not in the art form. So I think it's hard for a non-musician to look at a musician and give mandates, because if you're not a musician, especially in church, let me give you what we do in church. We don't get the feeling like anybody that works in like sound, like we don't get filled in church. We're working all the time. Work. We have to rehearse. We have to learn songs. If you've never been in a praise team, especially a music director, I implore you to go home and learn 2 songs that you've never heard before and give yourself 6 days. Go to work, come home, deal with your family, and learn those songs, and then learn them to a point where you can worship them and be effective in your worship. And then do that Sunday, and then you don't get an applause, you don't get a congratulations. It's immediately next Sunday has to be better. It's an ongoing thing. So we have to feel ourselves. So especially musicians, where you're learning songs, it is not easy to do, but the good people make it look like it's easy. It's not. So it's a constant work. So most musicians, when they're leaving church and they're playing for whomever, it's work. So it's very easy to look at that and say, and make that ultimatum. Like, no, you're in church, so you have to love God. Like, no, I'm loving God, but this is what I've been blessed to do. So why can't I go out and work with other people? Because I think the conversation should switch into, if you know that I have a relationship with God, I think you would want me to go out and be with this person and that person.
That
because
you're not going to probably go out to see.
But
or
I don't
meet,
think we teach that. We teach if you go out with some
But,
worldly people, you're going to turn worldly all of a sudden.
I
Again,
think it depends on your leadership.
no,
though.
but I think we have to remember the stigma that's been passed down.
Right.
You know, that has the
Let's end the
restraint
stigma.
of protection. Like, again, instead of teaching you how to thrive in an environment, we sometimes make the
Extreme.
decisions to the extreme just to keep you
Well, we
out of
think
the
it's safe,
environment.
right.
And then we wrap scriptures around it. Avoid the very appearance of evil. You know, separate and come from amongst them. You know, and we'll take scriptures and sometime out of context, sometimes we'll blend them together
Merge 'em.
to support, what we want to
And
teach.
then the person you're talking to probably don't even know the word, so they getting it from you with an expectation of that's what it is.
It's a bombardment. You develop this relationship with God through and by Holy Spirit, and I'm not going against anybody's church, anybody's pastors, anybody's teaching, But so that this thing resonates in you, that you understand your assignment, and feel free to go where you go and do what you've been called to do. And then watch this, look for the one evangelistic moment that may create where you get to share your story, and it literally changes somebody else's life, that a person that's never going to church, that never plugging into our lives or any of that. But because you're in this club, they're in this club, you're playing, they're playing, and they just take note of you. The conversation happens, you get the opportunity to share. Have you not fulfilled the Great Commission? I just think as the church, quote unquote, we gotta broaden our perspective and our horizons and be a little more graceful and how we see this, because it's been dogmatic.
Absolutely.
But it's not been dogmatic, I would hope, for the most part, to damn. A lot of it's been to protect. And in doing so, we've actually pushed
I think
People
so.
away.
especially our younger generation, because, again, I love my grandmother, my great-grandmother. I wouldn't be who I am without them, but those upbringings were so
Hard.
strict and hard. It was like we had to beg to play football because football was played on Saturday, and but football paid half of my way through college. You know what I'm saying? It was a talent. It wasn't the greatest, but it was a talent, and I used the talent. Watch this. Your gift will make room for you.
It will.
So, at the same time, where we're trying to marginalize where we allow our young people to go, maybe we need to teach them how to be successful wherever they go. Does all music resonate with me? No. Dave helped me out on Sunday. I've not moved past the 70s, 80s, because the rest of it doesn't resonate. The early 90s, after that, the rest of it does not resonate with me. It's
So
not my time frame. It don't
Clarify
resonate.
This is why he's saying that. So scientifically,
Yeah, you help them. Because they looking at me like I'm crazy.
you are.
Microphone and everything.
So scientifically, between the ages of 9 and 15, 16, 17, around that age, is the age of what they call in musicians' ears is exploration. So that's the age where you find all of the sounds that you like, and you start. This is a sign. You can Google it. That's the age where you find those sounds that are accustomed to your ear, whether it's gospel or whatever. You find those sounds, and then from the ages of about 20 to about 25, 26, you start finding the artists that have that sound. Everything after 26, you're just reinventing that sound that you like. So that's why, like, my dad likes the same songs. That's why I'm getting to the point where I'm a musician, so I'm able to listen to new things. But the majority of people after 26, when you get out of school or whatever, and you get out of grad school, you've listened to everything that you want to listen to. So you're just going to continuously listen to those things. So that's why.
You don't have to just go to grad school. I think you just do.
Yeah, whatever.
I just thought I'd tell y'all.
So that's why all of music, if not a great majority of it, is always conditioned to the younger crowd, because those are the ears that are being the most affected. Because that's why, we know the larger and this is, you can go to any label and talk to their lawyers. It's a whole bullet thing, which is why music is really just a bunch of business. It ain't art no more. But they know you're not gonna find the new stuff. You don't even want to listen to it. So when you hear it, it's gonna go like I laugh at my dad, because me and my niece, we play stuff for him and he hates it, right? And it could sound so similar and he hates it like it's the worst thing ever. But that's because your ears are done.
Conditioned.
You don't want to hear anything new. You are in love with what you're in love with. So that's why we always gravitate to the young people. So it's a scientific thing. If you don't know that, Google it. It's very informative and knowledgeable.
That's all
But
y'all
one of the
doing is
things-
sampling good stuff anyway. Samplers.
There you go.
One of the-
Samplers.
There you go.
I was-
There we
Sample,
go with the
sample,
sample
sample.
I
thing.
was trying to talk, but they've been
There
talking
we
the whole
go.
time.
We're just taking it and making it better. That's all.
No, you're not. Now,
So before they
don't
break
start
out,
no
before
point.
they have
Don't
Exactly
start
my
no
point.
before they
argument
have
up
a
here.
song
Then they get
break out,
offended because they say that's my music, and y'all
They'll be
taking that
messing up
music.
our music.
They taking my music.
So my question to you,
Yeah.
before we have to leave, one of the things
We
I
gotta
wanted to-
leave.
well, somebody gonna have to go home eventually. I mean, I don't think this is a
This is a
17-hour
good
show.
conversation.
It is
It
a really
is.
good conversation. I'm
Great.
having
So
a-
we could just, I mean, usually Dad cuts us off and tell us we have to leave.
Pastor Joe go tell us off.
How
So
much time
one
we
of the
got?
things that I wanted to ask, and maybe even bringing it to a space of how crossover could happen, do you evangelize when you do your gigs? Is that a part of who you are as a musician?
You know what? Yes, for one. Sorry that took so long.
I don't
but
know why.
Yeah,
I'm
he's
so
thinking
bad at
about
thinking
No, 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 no.
Somebody
I was gonna
recording
say-
me. This is
right.
recorded. Is somebody
maybe
watching
sometimes-
me? He stopped recording back there
It's
for you.
funny because I get more. I couldn't think of the right word. That's why I get more people asking me about my work ethic, and the fact that I don't do the drinking and stuff, and so that has made my evangelism very easy because I get a lot of people that say, you know, why you always on time and you work so hard and why is that?
Look at you on time.
always-
Right.
on time.
That is
that is
something.
rough in the music
It
business.
is, I would say-
Nobody's on time.
I was.
And you know you're right.
And know your
you don't
stuff.
drink like because people don't understand. I was actually with a group in LA and they didn't understand that you can write a song without being high. Like they did not understand that. Like we have to take a break 20 minutes before to smoke and I was done. And so I get way more of those opportunities. And then it's like, oh yeah, because you know,
Right.
I don't need to be high. I'm high on God, you know, and it goes so much smoother than people just, you know, we just I'm usually never in a spiritual conversation. It's more like those, like, why don't you have to do X,
Your
Y, and Z?
story, your testament,
Yeah.
your life. Yeah.
So it's very interesting, and it's just work ethic. It's like, you know, I feel like when I'm out, I'm doing this for God. So there's a standard that I
Right.
have to
That's
meet,
good.
and then that seems to reverberate more than me toting my Bible around.
Is
And
that an SAT word?
Reverberate. Ooh.
That is something. Spell that.
go to school, y'all.
Spell that.
Him got education.
So another question
That's
is,
agricultural and technical.
That's right.
as
State
a-
University.
as
Go,
a-
go ahead.
this is right here. This is why I say they could have just did it. I don't understand why they just had me sitting up here talking to myself. No, but now that you're a music minister, the minister of music here, do you think that you should be a member of where you serve? Like, so should you, like musicians, some musicians just come and play, or people hire musicians. So should those musicians be a member of where they serve? Should they sow where they serve?
Yeah.
These long guesses is real weak.
Because it's a tough question because we've created, I think, the church, and I say culture. I wasn't singling out the black church, just in general. I think we've created this monster where the musicians are somehow different. Than everybody in the church, and I think a lot of that is because we don't pay them. I was a part of St. Paul's music ministry, and they didn't separate at that time. They didn't separate. Like everybody was the same, so you had to be the same members' classes, the same time. Like everybody was the same, but they were giving them like living wages, like because they understood this is 80% of the service. So y'all, and there's 3 services and Saturdays, and we require a lot of you. So I think in a lot of churches that I've been to outside of like we have, for some reason, we've allowed the musicians to, like I remember as a kid watching musicians play, and then the sermon is on, they on their phone, you know, and it just seems like a disconnect, and I don't know why that happened, and then we just allowed them to go, and I think a lot of that is because we don't really, from experience, no one comes up to the musicians and gives them any kind of what's the word I'm looking for? No, they just don't give them. There's no standard for them.
Well, a lot of times it's, you know, that it was, we want your gift, but we're not concerned about your soul.
Right, and that's how it feels.
And For
it
me,
Not
it's
here.
just the
Here is good.
opposite. I am not real comfortable. Like before you came and you started to set directions on. My thing was if somebody was like, "Hey, we're looking for a drummer. Hey, I want to play." My first mandate was you have to come and see our service. Because I'm not worried of, I need your musicianship to be, on point and all of that. But the first thing is I need to know you can sit here and be fed, because my first concern is your soul, not your drumming. Because I've seen it go the opposite way just too many times. And we'll take your gift and we'll treasure your gift, but we'll never take the time to ensure that your soul is being ministered to, that we're speaking to you, that we're concerned about your family. Hey, you're going through all of this, and we've never even taken time to ask you about it, but we expect you to be here on Sunday morning prepared
well.
to perform, and to perform well, which is the problem I have with performance, but that's another thing.
Performance is great. You don't be scared of performance. Okay, everything your preaching is performing. Stop playing. But to piggyback
Now you
off,
really want to start
no,
trouble,
no,
Well, we'll see y'all
performance
next
is a good
week.
word. It's not a
because
bad word.
That is a
So,
whole nother
but to
place.
piggyback off of that, and I think going back to the original question about the piano player playing, I think when I've done shows outside of the church, there is a reward that you don't get when you're in church, because outside people do come up to you and they say, "Oh, that was great." Not saying that that's important, but it does give you a sense of I matter, and people want to take
affirmation is-
pictures, and
yeah.
especially when you're
Yeah.
playing with somebody of some notoriety, they just want to be around you, and because even if they just want to be around you so they can get to whoever they're trying to get to, but it's still a sense of gratitude. Whereas in church, when service is over, like they've cut the sound off on us plenty of time when we are if you've ever seen musicians playing at the end of church, it's because we're filling ourselves back up, because we've given and we don't have a space to have that moment to just jam for the sake of jamming. Like we're not worshiping God. Sometimes it is, but we're just giving that art back to us, right? And then, they'll cut the lights off. They'll cut the sound off real quick because nobody
Joe.
understands that part of we need that gratitude because we've set this thing in church where you can't go up to people and say you were great, because our response has to be, "Oh God, be the glory." We can't we can't take that in, but pastor can take pictures with people and it's fine. Not you, but just in general. So I think that also piggybacks on.
No,
If you have to
true.
choose,
it's
That
okay
is
to
true.
say that. It's okay
That
to
is
say
true.
that.
So I think
it's
with
true.
that musician, I think if he were given that ultimatum, he's not going to choose the church, because he's going to say the only thing that the church is going to offer me is more church.
Right.
They're not going to offer me a space to just entertain. And I think that word, from my experience, has been not a great word in church. We, for some reason, with the exception of going bowling, we're not allowed to take
wow.
things to just be entertained by them. Like I can't just go to a comedy show. It always
Strictly for the
seems to
entertainment.
have to be spiritually based, as opposed to saying, didn't God create these things as well?
I think again,
Not
that-
to go off in a tangent.
No,
I'm not.
no,
But
no,
I just think it's one of those things where you lose perspective. There are certain things, and that's why I love our church. That when we sat down and we did certain things, we asked, why are we doing this? When we looked at our small groups, all the leaders that are in here will attest. When we looked at small groups and we started doing small group planning, it was like, why are we doing this? What's the purpose of the small group? Was it to be so spiritual, or was it for the fellowship, for fun? And we was like, the main thing we want people to do in our small groups is have fun. So that's the purpose of them, to be entertaining, to have a good time, to make a friend. A place to engage and to connect. It wasn't so much that every small group had to have 10 scriptures and you had to go through this book, and we didn't do that. But a lot of small groups, that's what they're there. They're your spiritual development. And we was like, we'll do that in Bible study. We'll do that, in other forms, but we want this to be fun. And I think, again, sometimes that, and I know I'm supposed to go off and it's the word.
Tangent.
It's literally the word perform. It's literally the word entertain.
But that's all we've done in church historically is perform. That's why we have, good and well, we have gospel singers and they have a certain sound. You sound like a gospel singer, and half of them is not inspired by the Holy One.
Right.
It's inspired by a lot of jazz music, and everybody wants to be Kim Burrell. But that's what it weirds me out because we look down on these words,
Yeah.
but yet we do these words, just like the pastors who preach and have the preacher voice. And all of our little kids can emulate that.
Right.
That's performance to push the message in a way that your
entertaining.
audience can get
It
it.
is
But-
entertaining.
But the
though.
funny thing is the very thing that we say that you shouldn't do in church is entertain, because it's the fake part. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So I get you saying that we actually do it, but then we come back and speak down on it and say, well, that's the fake part. The performance, the dancing on cue. Like,
'Cause
some of the stuff just like,
I haven't been to theology school, but there is a course that teaches you how to preach, right?
not,
It is- like, it
not
is-
when you say
Here we
preach,
go.
you're talking
I mean,
about
like
a
the
course
hooping
that,
and
no,
the-
there's
and
the
there's
faces.
there's
and
not.
the pieces.
No,
And
no.
they define each of them.
No.
And so that's just a part of what? Culture
Yes.
or the entertaining?
And again, PBS did a wonderful documentary on the black church and the involvement of the black church. Hooping came from the fields into the church. Hooping started in the fields. It was the way that they communicated to let them know what the plan was, what they were doing. And the overseers, the masters didn't understand. It was it migrated into the church, and that's where hooping comes from. So there is not hoopology 101 that's taught
called
in
Union
theology.
to see what
No,
class y'all
no,
was
I think
in.
though that the word, I guess I have a different relationship with the word entertain because I come from a theatrical
Right.
background. And even here, there are elements that you have to use to make things excellent. So we can't just, and I tell the praise, and shout out to the praise team, they do an amazing job. So
Unity.
like I tell them all the time, like you can't, we've been through services where, and I've been through them too. We're famous for just saying, let the Spirit do whatever the Spirit's going to do. I've been through services where we're making up songs on the spot, like because the Spirit's going to take over. And that's just not, it may have happened once out of all the Sundays that we did, but the majority of the time, it's a lack of preparation.
I was gonna say, that's a
and
good
that
excuse for not being prepared.
Right. And that
And those
preparation.
three
Y'all didn't
words,
practice it.
you get them
But
three
you know what?
words, and it'll get
That's
you
it.
there.
And Pastor Joe's just hit us with the number. We got to
Right.
go.
Come on, man,
watch
we just got started.
It's the same thing.
Stop hitting my chair.
That you will find pastors that start hooping
mm-hmm.
after they read the scripture and start hooping. Why?
prepared.
and
Prepared.
and just like this is, but watch, it's an emotional response, and if that's what you are, that accustomed to, and that's that enticement in your ear that tickle, you'll get right with them,
Didn't even know what he
and
said.
then and go home and say, man, we had some
Good
church.
church.
What did he
church.
teach? I have no idea.
What scripture he said?
He
It
didn't say
wasn't.
one, did he?
It wasn't.
But he said, wow,
Well, I'm glad you know.
that thing hurt.
So one of the things before we close that I did want to do.
We're not closing.
We gonna have to. Pastor Joe can cut the lights off. One of the things that I want to ask
John
out
said-
loud.
John said he running this show tonight.
Joe said, "Well, go ahead." Have you ever been to see him play a gig?
Yes,
That is what I wanted to
Not
end on.
recently.
I've actually seen two,
He's hired me.
Yeah, and he has also hired you.
and I've had him to, and we had a ball both times. So I actually, went to, and
I'm trying
now
to close. I was saying something.
I don't like.
So let's
clubs.
close. How do you feel?
I don't
closing
like
this
clubs.
out with Pastor White, evangel of Christian Community Center.
But I
Formerly
did
known
go
as
to the club twice.
That was so
Yeah.
long ago. Don't judge me on that.
I didn't judge you. She asked me, did I go? Have I
How
ever went
did
to see
you
you perform?
feel about? We did.
He
okay,
slid
real
down
quick.
the pole. Did you
I'm
slide
sorry.
down the pole?
Yeah.
No, he came down on the swing.
I didn't slide down no pole.
He came down on the swing.
That's Bree's fault. But
looking like Prince.
So,
Some black leather gloves on.
hey, look now. So when we had, see, I'm trying to go. When we had the Valentine's night, was it last year, the year before?
Year
It
before
was
last.
year before.
Okay.
The night of romance is coming back in 2022.
So to put a period on this conversation, first,
You don't get
Period.
to put a period on it.
anyway,
Like, he
so
just
I
took
love the
over
word
my
that we
list.
use. We use grace. We use just, letting people where they are. And just really, some things can just be entertainment. Like the movies that we all watch and the books that we read. Sometimes we can just be
Strictly
filled with
entertained.
reading a fictional novel about
Right.
nothing and just saying, I just needed a minute to just...
B.
So I watched this awesome concert from Lucky Day or something that has really great music. Anyway, exactly.
That's-
Y'all need to do
that's
some
one of
research.
them music
So
people.
you hired a musician that you knew or thought you knew loved God to come and play a show for couples for a Valentine's night, and it was totally quote unquote secular.
Totally. From
All
the
the
guy
way.
telling jokes to the guy playing,
What would you say to the other minister who gave his keyboardist an ultimatum? Like, what would be the difference between you and him? Because you've experienced it and you've hired it and brought it into your building and
Brought it,
stand on
yeah.
your stage.
And jump
and
across
can't
your
wait to
pulpit.
do it again. Had a ball. We gonna do it again, man.
What is the
So what would you
difference?
say?
Why was that acceptable?
But it was acceptable
In
here.
all,
I
watch
think
this.
it's the leader.
In
And
all
in church.
in all actuality, it wasn't. We got pushback. We got pushback.
Now we get the real story.
We got negativity. I got some red you knows. But here's the thing. Here's the thing, man. We had couples or married couples or persons that were engaged and whatnot. It flowed from our marriage ministry where we teach strategies on how to strengthen your marriage or equip those to be, becoming married. And it was a celebration. I'm almost like you, man. Stop taking yourself that serious, okay? Smile, laugh. This life is real short. It's real short. And we better learn how to enjoy it. If Jesus said that I came that you can have life and have it more abundantly, amplified translations, to the full, to the overflow. That's the way I plan to live it. I get it. I am not comfortable doing everything. Like you, I have lines. There are places that I get invited to that I just can't go. And I'm not saying you wrong for going, you wrong for going. I can't go. I am not comfortable. I'm not going to be comfortable. I'm going to be the party pooper or the whatever. It's amazing. I love my partners to life, but I stopped going to a lot of their cookouts. And not because I didn't enjoy my partners.
They couldn't cook.
I walk in and the whole, it's like
Everybody got a red
Frosty
cup.
the
Right.
Snowman just walked in and cups disappearing. People putting their cups on the grill. Yeah, I mean, just anything. You laughing, but
That's
it was
the
just anything. Bottles, cigarettes,
People that
they
had
eating.
people running. It was-
Why go? First I didn't understand why invite me. You know who I am. You know how I'm coming. Then why
think you
go
was
to
gonna
make
come.
other people
They thought you was going to bring
that
some wine.
uncomfortable, right? Or turn the water,
Turn the
into,
water into it.
Yo, Slim, we ran out. What you got? Can you do that
Heard-
thing?
hey, look, we heard Jesus
got
did it.
this
Can
one
you do
thing.
that
Yo,
thing?
look.
So for me, my thought to that pastor with the conversation, is this you or is this the pressure that comes from standing in the place that you have to stand? Where is the conviction or the condemnation coming from? Because 9 times out of 10, if that pastor's married and he's home making love to his wife, I guarantee you Kurt Franklin is not playing. You know what I'm saying? So listen, and I'm grateful to Dave and have had the chance to really develop a relationship because it broadened my perspective on a lot of things. It's a job. It's a job. And just like all of us, we all have accountabilities and responsibilities to the kingdom. We all have an influence. And you can't forget that. no matter what you're doing, no matter when she's convoing with Nikki, when you're Dave Live, when I'm Julius, the counselor, we still have an influence, and we're responsible for how we use it. That influence still flows from the kingdom of God, and there is kingdom laws, rules that apply. So none of us move past those principles. We all have to find how to be successful in our endeavors, our personal endeavors, yet not diminishing who God is and who we are in the kingdom of God. There's a hand in the back. Come up and get a mic, bro. And I think we have to remember that. We have to, yeah, we are. But we have to remember that, and that doesn't change.
Pastor Joe, let me come back.
That doesn't change for any of us, no matter where we go. So let's get this question, and then Nikki, you can help us get on out of here. Come on, bro.
Basically, this was really good. I actually needed to see this. I was it's almost as if I'm hearing two sides, which you're an awesome mediator, by the way.
Thank you so much.
But I'm looking at the individual and I'm looking at the congregation. And there are people who know not God like us. So they got to come in here. They're coming in here secular. You understand? But this is not just a place of education to teach. This is also a place of rehabilitation. Okay? And they coming in secular. So to judge, I heard these words: judge, preference. I heard entertain. I heard they know who I am. Why would they even invite me? See, you have to govern a place that teaches and rehabilitates. That's church. That's the leader of the church have to do that. So your music, you might have gospel, it may sound like this or sound like that. What are the people that's walking in secular, what are they going to identify with? Okay, where are you really going to reach it, and what's your target base? Are you targeting the young folks? Are you targeting...
Do I get to respond to this, or?
Oh yeah, I mean, I was.
Oh, okay.
Finished.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm finished. I just wanted to let y'all know this was really good.
Thank you.
And I'm looking at David. I know David. He's this guy, but
I'm sorry.
I'm really. You know what? And it's really good to hear David, and because Pastor White, I really respect you. I've been following you for years. Maybe not in your church, but I do keep an eye on you. But listening to you today was very organic, but I feel like you was genuine. I really want to know, how do you move forward in having this open forum, and what does it do for you as a minister?
Great questions. So let me, since I get the response, thank you. First of all, let me clarify something. When you heard me say they know who I am literally talking to my kids. No. When I say that, but one, how could they? When I say I know who I am, I know where I'm going to go and be comfortable, and go and be uncomfortable. And sometimes uncomfortable speaks very loud. Even if you're trying to fit in and be comfortable, uncomfortable just speaks very loud. So I don't want to go to people's houses and seem standoffish, but sometimes I'm just like, my vibe is totally different. And I'm not trying to say I'm spiritual deep. My vibe is just totally different. And everything does not agree with my spirit. And I'm like, I ain't feeling this and I don't feel good. I don't want to be here. Now, just like you got a right not to be somewhere, I pretty much figure I got the same right to exercise that concerning me. But when I said they know who I am literally talking to my kids. And she'll testify. I go And so that's, and maybe I should have prefaced how I said that. It's not like I won't go. It's just like, okay, when I'm coming to their house, they already know. When I go to my daughter's
Let him
house,
come
they
first, and
already,
everybody else come after
yeah,
you.
yeah. Come get your plate, daddy.
You want me to bring it outside?
And-
Okay, I'm
and
on
I
my
already
way.
understand that, what's happening behind the scene. So that's not it. You said when they come in, they're coming in secular and they need to be rehabilitated. I love how you preference that. So watch this. So watch this. Because I'm wise enough, thank God, to understand that, I do what I do. I let them do what they do. So he's here. He's here because I hired him. We've been trying to do this for 5 years. Because there is an understanding. There isn't a spirit of agreement. There is. But when he came in, he said, what do you want me to do? Man, I want you to take the music to another level. I want energy to come off the stage. I want it to sound like a sound that they're going to resonate with. Why? Because we understand the demographic of our church. Our church is equipped. It is positioned that we best minister to persons from 25 to 50. That's the demographic that God has given us. That's the voice. So watch this. I do what I do. I teach. All the rest of this, God has placed wonderful, talented people around me to do what they do. I don't worry about the lighting. We had pushback on lights and what. We don't need all that. No, you don't need all that. We got the lights. We didn't buy lights for you, sweetie. We understand you saved, sanctified, full of Holy Ghost, fire, baptized. So we ain't buy lights for you. We didn't put TVs up for you that show the lyrics of the songs.
Sweetie.
We put that up for persons that come in to watch this that didn't know the songs. And all it took was one person to come to me to say, thank you. Because you had words up, I was able to sing along, even though I don't know the song, and I could participate. I was sold. So I do what I do. I understand what my job is here. I teach. His job is to get the music that's going to attract. His job is to create atmosphere through lighting, sound. Ty's job is to do what they do through medium. His job is to make sure they got the money to do what they do. We work together. Everybody understands their roles. Everybody understands their impact. She know that in the morning, she needs to get up. Him and her, they get up. He the serious guy, she the hype. We understand it. We understand it. He gonna give you everything that's happening. She gonna turn around and say it in a way that you can enjoy, where he just said it. Everybody understands. You know what I'm saying? So I'm hoping I'm answering your question. How do we take it further? Is that now we look for, just like what we've been talking about, we look for opportunities to take it outside of our walls, but we perfected here. We train, we developed here. And then we want to take it outside our walls, and we still know our roles. I don't worry about, I don't tell him what he can sing. I don't tell him what he can't sing. I don't tell him he can't jump up and down. I might tell him, look, bro, you need to turn that down, all right? That's just ridiculous. But, we know our roles. We embrace our roles. We work together to create an evangelistic, attractive environment that allows us to teach, to do, watch this, to fulfill our mission. And our mission consists of 3 R's. We are to reach, raise, and release. And everything we do works towards fulfilling that mission, which flows from our vision to be changing people with the love of God. So that's the focus. That's the drive. That's what we dialed in at. That's what we're trying to make happen. And if I didn't answer your question, me and you, we get in the corner and chop it up as long as you want to. He might tell me I got to get off TV, but he can't tell me I got to leave the building. So
But one of the things I will say. Oh.
Basically, it's an understanding that you as a leader have to govern a place that teaches and reachability. So the music has a lot to do with it.
Oh, it does.
definitely.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I ain't want you to get in defensive mode.
Oh, no. I'm not.
He just talks strong. It's just
I just
strong
say it with my
talking.
chest.
He just talked with his chest a lot. But it's hard. It's one of the things that I do want to say is for me, like, and if
We
you
are
have it,
overtime.
we are. But this past Sunday, if you go back and watch, like I was a clubber. Like that was like my thing. Friday night, I'm a club because I like to dance. That's what I love to do. So being able,
She meant all of that.
because right. However, to have that
She's
moment
still under
of when
rehabilitation.
praise and worship went in this, on Sunday, I was excited. I enjoyed, you know what I mean? And so people who was not here, I think even the younger kids be like, oh, and the teens, they enjoyed those moments because it's necessary, because they coming in that way. So not forget who we are, but meet them where they are with the
No, you remember the time that Malik and
Travis danced in front of the church.
yeah.
Yeah.
And man, I got so much stuff. And the one time when we was teaching, we pulled them down to do the whip thing. Boy, I done got beat up so bad because I mean, just people being people. So I understand the scrutiny that you get from doing your music. One time we did a sermon series called Ignite. And I used from the Ohio Players, I used Fire. Had the red lights and the sirens and all that, man.
You knew better than that.
Yeah, I should have, I guess.
Well, before Pastor Joe cut us off in the middle
We
of a
done said that the
sentence,
last
that's gonna be
30
real
minutes.
weird, right? We've been closed. I feel like a real preacher. I done closed 4 times.
I'm about to close now.
One of the things that I do want to do, first of all, thank both of you all. Not really, but I was gonna thank y'all for being a part.
Thanks for
but I
having
do
me
for
on
real.
there.
I do.
It's really nice.
And I
Y'all
do
give it
wanna
up for
celebrate-
Dave Lord.
So my mic is still on. I am. Somebody cut past the mic off because I was still talking. But one of the things I think that myself and Dave can attest to is that being a part of this ministry and doing the things that we do that may not be on a spiritual platform, but us both being evangelists in the world, being able to reach God, was definitely because we have great leadership. So we celebrate you. Happy birthday to our pastor. It's tomorrow. His Cash App is, you could just send it to me. I don't know, put it at the bottom. But we thank you for tuning in to Talk to Me Tuesday. First Lady, I love you. I pray, and we all pray that
Hey, boo-boo,
you
I hope you feel better.
Get better and feel better. And
Send me a text
we'll
if you
see
need
you
something.
guys next week. Same time, same place. Our last Tuesday of the month. Peace.
Peace. Shout out to the production team. John, Lil Joe, Sweetie Pie, whoever she might be. I don't know her name. When you're old, you just get to call people whatever. Thank you, sir.